welcome everyone. Byproducts, for those who haven't joined or are new to it, is it's a community of product people, mostly out of Berlin. We originally started the community to bring together product leaders, VPs, directors, CPOs, etc. And we've done a lot of peer-to-peer content, but we've got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge to share. So we were thinking, what's the next place where we can do that effectively? And the people in the community thought it'd be a good idea to tell those who are kind of on their leadership journey, their experiences. So we've come up with future leaders, and we've already done the first event, and we went through what is the job, because maybe if you haven't done the job, you might be surprised to hear what's actually what's expected and what really goes on. Sometimes some of the stuff that you might not see your line manager doing. So if you check out the Slack channel, actually, there's some sound bites recorded from that first one if you want to check that out. But today is the first 90 days. So for those who are in a head of product role, or perhaps that's the next place you want your career to go, we're going to be going through what the first 90 days might look like. So just to introduce everyone, I'm Mike. I work for AmSource, we're a talent solutions business, and I am the co-founder of Byproduct. We've got Alexandra. She is director of product at UXCam. Bastian, he's the VP over at WorkMotion, and Nikhil is a product lead at Penta. So if we just kind of do a quick intro, just go back a sec. Alex, if you want to just tell people a little bit about you, and then Bastian can go, and last but not least, Nikhil.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Really briefly about me, I have maybe around like 8, 9-ish, I don't even remember, years of experience in product management, right? Transitioning from design role, product design. And as of now, I'm running product at UXCam, which is a mobile analytics product and experience analytics for mobile apps. And what I'm really trying to do here is actually to build a system that builds products, right? And that's very fascinating. I would love to share some of it with you.
That's what the Byproduct channel's for.
Yes.
Awesome. So my name is Bastian. Thanks so much for having me today here in this round. Really glad to see you all. I started my career also as junior product manager, and by now I'm VP of product. I've done product management for different companies, mostly with a focus on B2B SaaS products. And this is also what I'm doing at WorkMotion right now. What we try to achieve is shaping the future of remote work and how people can work together around the globe, even though you might not have subsidiaries around the whole globe as a company. And yeah, I'm really happy today if I can share some of my experience. When I think back about my first 2 days, is also quite exciting to think back. So really happy to be here and share some of this and answer your questions.
Super awesome. And I also want to begin with thanking everyone who made it. This kind of validates our plans and our assumption that this conversation is important, right? And it's always good to bring people together. So I wanted to start with that, and just a brief intro about myself. My name is Nikhil, and I originally come from India. I started my product journey from business analysis, basically. I was a BA at the start, and then kind of fell into product by accident. And now currently I've worked for like a number of companies back in the States, some of the bigger ones like AT&T, Toyota, and then now 3 years ago I moved to Berlin, which is why I also had the opportunity to work for some of the really cool new innovators like Heycar, Travel Circus, and now I lead product strategy and teams for the growth domain at Penta. So basically our mission is to invent the best business banking digitally.
Cool. Nice one. What we're going to do is going to kick things off with. Is this the first night? I thought we were going 30, 60, 90.
Alexandra just wanted to talk about the preparation phase beforehand, just because it makes sense.
I see.
Yeah.
Prep
Well,
I
phase.
think it's a more logical way to start with some prep work.
Definitely.
got you. Over
Right.
to Alexandra then.
Yeah. So why I wanted to put it here, even because I think that, like, in my experience, really getting a very good reputation as early as possible is such a tailwind to your career in a new company, right? So it will give you the credibility you're looking for, trust, autonomy, maybe even more resources, and basically the impression that you create in your first week can be really detrimental to your success in that company, right? And in 2 words, what you want to show when you start the job is A, you know the product and the market relatively well, right? You know the company's main goals and challenges just on a high level so far, and you know approximately how to bridge this gap, or at least in which direction to go, right? So to prepare for this, basically, firstly, you want to gather some inputs for it, right? Hopefully by this time you already know something from your interviewing process about the product, company, market. If not, just ask. Your manager would be very happy to pre-onboard you. So really try to just understand the company vision, goals, main KPIs, especially product ones around like the main drivers, right? Acquisition, engagement, retention, monetization, right? They will already give you a very good indication of what could be the high impact areas of your focus, right? And then another thing that you want to ask is about execution, right? How discovery, delivery are currently running. Just try to understand the sentiment, right? Is it working? Is it not really working? When you're talking to your to a manager or future colleagues, you'll understand from the way they're speaking about this, right? And then I would just recommend to take some time to explore the market, industry, domain by yourself if you don't know them yet, right? Just to understand, like, what are the biggest players, what are the industry challenges, because this is a critical knowledge to any PM, and the earlier you get it, the more insights you can generate since day one. And then what you want to do is transform this into sort of a suggestion, maybe merely like a draft of how you would go on then when you start. How would you go on about the product strategy, product execution of that strategy, right? And improving the PM team effectiveness. Like, basically you can do this exercise as small or as big as you want, depending on your time, etc. But like, even if you don't have time, just make sure that you have some sort of like grounds to start off in your first month, right? That you have a way to think about strategy, execution, and the team development. So like that, in general, how effectiveness looks like. You will go deeper in on each point when you start, but at least you know where to start, even before you start, right? So, and the third part of a system is like a system of record. I really truly encourage everyone to start leading a personal product management and product leadership wiki. It will help you multiple times in your career. And trust me, even after just completing this exercise alone, you'll just become a better product expert, because structure is everything. So this sort of prep work will just allow you to be sharp and really shine in your first days. I do recommend to share it with your manager in a form of your like vision, right? And ask for their input. Then you rework it a little bit with the given input, and then you can just start sharing it with your new colleagues, with your peers, right? Stakeholders in your intro meetings, just to tell them, hey, I'm such and such, and this is how I envision us going forward, right? And they will be impressed. And trust me, this is not easily earned, right? So just don't forget to iterate on it, add more meat, kind of substance to it, change underlying assumptions, because this will happen, right? No plan can hold up to reality. And if there is one thought that I'm really trying to bring here is then like to be proactive, right? About your work, about your career, about your own growth. Be the first one to show that you're actually ready to rock, right? And don't make your manager or your colleagues chase you and ping you. And it's much better to have an approximate action plan of 10 bullet points, right? Even vague at that moment, than kind of no plan at all. And this prep work that you're doing will also help you to understand your 30, 60, 90 day scope much better. That's all. Like it's super simple, right? I'm just trying to encourage to put in some extra work. I know that sometimes it cannot happen because you're finishing your job and you're starting the new one. But if you have this luxury of investing into this, I would really encourage you to do this because it will pay off like multiple times in the future.
Alex, what was your personal experience with the prep phase in the 90 days? Because obviously you come into this with the beauty of hindsight.
Yeah. So to me, I actually had quite a lot of time before starting my job at UXCam. And this was a very fascinating activity for me. So basically, I invested into this and I came up with my own product operation system that I call it for UXCam, right? And it really paid dividends. And as for my actual plan, again, like I built this plan that I shared with my manager, right? And we kind of co-created it together. But what it really showed is this high agency, your ownership, right? So they don't have to ask you, like, what do you think that you need to complete? Because that doesn't necessarily mean that they know, right? You're actually there to teach them as well. So in my opinion, like this 30, 60, 90 days, essentially they're similar, right? For a product leader job pretty much everywhere. And you want to overinvest in your first month in learning about your product, right? About your product, your customers, the market. So I structured it like as a learn, do, and meet or talk, right? But the main goal of the first month was to learn as much as possible. So I built it around the learning.
Cool. Well, I think we're going to build upon that anyway in the next slide. And Nikhil, I know you put this kind of structure together of 30, 60, 90, but just, yeah, the floor's open if anyone wants to jump in.
Yeah, so I think if we've got some high level points, obviously each of you have been through this, so perhaps a good way for people to understand how all this fits together is maybe just highlighting some examples of you know how you've managed attending new hire meetings and what have you. So Nikhil, you've had a lot of input on this slide deck, so do you want to kick us off and talk through some of your thinking and experience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what this kind of slide also signifies is what Alexandra said, right? To reiterate on that, the learning phase, to be able to absorb information for the first 30 days and really, really learn about your product and understand the product and various facets that deal with it, understand the other teams, know your stakeholders, and also you're going to be obviously on the onboarding meetings, right? Introduction of the product, introduction of the teams, how they work, ways of working of different teams. And yeah, so the first 30 days, I believe, is going to be understanding all of these to a deeper level, so that you can build up to a good knowledge base that you can use to contribute starting after the first 30 days. If you can. Yeah, I mean, Bastian, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, thanks.
Just rambling on.
Great points you both were making. And after especially what Alexandra was saying, I feel I was very unprepared when I started my first head of product position. Very impressive what you already had on your list beforehand, which is great. And I can only encourage that if you have the time. Because like also I want to give you a little insight for those who have not been in that position, but like at least I can say for myself, I mean, this is exciting, but also at the same moment a bit scary, right? If you're the first
Absolutely.
time in the position that you should lead a product and like be in the driver's seat for where the product strategy for the whole company is going, wow, this puts some pressure on you. So you might feel some feeling of being scared, of being overwhelmed, or something very common in my generation and the generation after, like something like the imposter syndrome, maybe even, right? Like, should I really be here? So I just want you to prepare that this is a totally normal feeling, and what Alexandra showed you is pretty nice because it helps you to gain some calmness and remind you there's a reason why I'm here, and I know how to do this stuff, and people chose me for a reason. And I go there prepared, and I go there with a plan. And what should happen, really, you know? So go there with a certain relaxedness, and this increases the better you are prepared. And also in the first 30 days, what Nikhil there showed, I think are great points, because they're, for me, like I wrote one word down for me, which is important the first 30 days, which is listening. And I think all those points that Nikhil pointed out here were points where you need to listen. You need to listen a lot when you start. People will come from all sides. They will come with their problems. Your team will come to you with problems, and the stakeholders will come to you with problems. The management board will come to you with problems. Everyone comes to you with a lot of problems. Yeah. So, and you have to listen. First of all, listen. Try to understand, and also with the product, right? Try to gain as much understanding as you can, but also don't be fooled. You won't have time to just spend a week and play around with the product. This will be impossible in this role. And so, but don't be scared. Very important, as a product lead, you probably are also like, you're a team lead, right? And you have to represent a certain calmness and certainty also to your teammates. Otherwise, this will end very badly, because this feeling of trust and security that Alexandra talked about, this is really something you have to generate for you and your whole team to protect the way you can be working throughout the next few months.
And this is one of the most challenging parts of this, right? Especially if you didn't have the managerial experience before that. Basically, you're coming to a new job, and people, you think at least that people are expecting certain things from you, and you don't have that experience. You really have to be very aware, right? But also try not to panic, let's say, because it's like you can never be prepared for your first baby, and you can never be prepared for your first managerial experience. So everything is going to be good, don't worry.
Absolutely. I mean, I can share like a quick funny story, right? Or even leading to like a possible solution where we can kind of get to know the product a little well. When I started my new role, right? And like Bastian said, like everyone wants your time, right? Everyone would reach out to you, including your team members as well as your stakeholders. But it's very important to protect your time and get to know the product, and which is sometimes quite impossible. So in order to facilitate this, right, this happened quite less when I joined my new role, my last role. So in order to facilitate this, we have this roster with PMs that are going to do the demo of the product every month. So there's one person that does the product demo every month for the whole company. It's not scheduled. It's the responsibility for the PM or the product person or anyone to schedule it and go through the various important features of the product, which really reinforces your product knowledge. Because when I was in charge of doing that, I woke up a night before to kind of go through the past demos and going through the UI again, which gave me a time to actually get closer to the product. So yeah, it's just wanted to share that.
Do you want to move on to the following 30 days?
I think so. We've covered that quite nicely, I think.
Yeah.
So you've done 30 days of listening. You know, what's the next 30 days looking like? Bastian, do you want to kick this bit off?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Nikhil, maybe you can touch upon the points that also you mentioned here. For me, one thing that I noted down for myself when I thought about, like, after the 30 days that you listened to all those problems, was like, okay, if the first month is over, you should really make sure, and this is a basic skill of every product manager. It's something you can use. You have used it in the past. Make sure to prioritize right, because
Right.
you will have all those problems throwing towards you. And if you even try to solve all of them at once or too many of those at once, you will fail. You will fail very badly. So make sure you prioritize them well, that you take a look at like, okay, which is really having the highest impact right now? Like maybe like also identify where the problem is. Like, is it's in your team? Maybe it's like do something that has a high impact for your team, or is it something that has a direct effect on the business? Because in the product, like it really depends. Yeah, like each situation is unique. I cannot tell you do this and this and that, but just like from what you listened, try to filter those things that really need your attention in the first place, and then go there. And don't think because you're the head of product now you have to solve every problem at once. That's not the case. Yeah, just like go problem by problem, like you did in the past. When you develop a product as a PM, you also go step by step in an agile development process. Do the same as the head of product with all the problems that are thrown at you. That would be my recommendation.
Or Nikhil.
Awesome. Yeah, Bastian, I just wanted to find out, like you mentioned, calculate like impact and prioritize, which is very, very important. Are there any specific techniques that you use to calculate what's important and what's not as soon as you start a new role?
Yeah, I mean, you can. It's hard, right? Because you don't have all the knowledge, and
Right.
I mean, a typical factor is like, yeah, how loud are people screaming and how many people are screaming is of course an indicator, right? But it's not always the best indicator. That's just to say, because some people can scream very loud and make a problem appear very big while it isn't. So go to the crown to that of that. Like, I mean, as PMs, we're used to take a look at data. Wherever data is
Right.
available, use this. But since it's such a wide field, you know, it's like I also came from this for a very broad perspective. It's not easy to say like this is exactly the right framework, but try to get a full picture. If you hear there is a problem, someone is really seems to be highly affected of this, get a second and a third opinion on it, just to make sure that you have a full picture about the situation.
Awesome. I mean, for the 60 days, it's the same. I mean, after you understand the product, for two big things from my side is just understanding the expectations from your role, from your peers as well as your superiors, and start collecting feedback already, right? And see where things could potentially improve or you see progress being made, and that's definitely going to help you. And now I'm going to transition to Alexandra. Maybe you want to add something.
Yes, thank you. I would add one thing that I think it's kind of obvious, but maybe it wasn't like explicitly told, that don't rush to change anything right away, right? So first of all, I really don't believe in like impact since day one. I think it's a nice fairy tale, right? So I think that like since your second month, you can actually plan to maybe introduce a couple of small changes. I actually even put this into my plan. I didn't know what that would be, right? But I understood that like this is the time when I can start, that I've listened enough and I can start actually helping. I didn't think about this as changes, right? But actually helping. I think that the most maybe obvious parts and easiest in a way would be around the product discovery process, right? Because it's never perfect and PMs are kind of really pros. Delivery process tend to be more established, right, than the discovery process. I don't know, I've never worked in a very big corporation like enterprise, so I don't know how it's there, but in the startups like SMBs, mid-markets, it's typically like this. Or another possible way would be to contribute to the data structure in terms of like product metrics, right? Especially if the organization didn't have a very like developed product organization within it, right? Or haven't yet really established the product culture, right? On the based on the evidence and feedback, right? So you can contribute like, how can we improve this? Maybe we could add a little bit more structure to the metric. Maybe we can put the metrics on a tree. And the same around, for example, feedback and requests from the customers, right? So you can help maybe normalize some of the chaotic points, right? So it's not like super, it's not a very big change, but a sum of these small things really will already set you apart as someone who does not only listen, but also tries to incorporate this little things, right, that you're acting as well, without a big risk, let's say.
Alexandra, do you think sometimes you're new to a role, you maybe feel, you know, there's a great opportunity and you kind of have to prove yourself, and maybe people are a little overzealous with the changes, and it can not necessarily be received too well? Have you done that, or have you seen that? I've definitely heard of that as a recruiter. You hear all sorts of things, but you know, small changes rather than disrupting everything.
Yeah, and that's why I think that there is this general advice, right? Because you don't know people, and there is already some dynamics, one may call it politics, right, that you also need to feel, because you're now a part of the system, right? And I don't think that there is a universal rule for this, but I think that you also, like, a second like line of this job is people leadership, right? So you need to start like feeling how people talk, how they think about everything, what's happening, right? So that's why I would say that don't rush, because maybe you're stepping up on someone else's toe and you're, I don't know, let's say getting yourself an enemy, right? And this is not something, like, you need support and you need confidence, vice versa. And it may sound like a little bit of a political advice, but it kind of is, right? It's like you're in the leadership role now, and you need to see this mechanics of the play of this game. Let's call it like this. This is how I feel about this sort of changes, and why you want to be not like super risky, maybe when it involves other people, when it involves other teams, stakeholders, etc. At the same time, when you're feeling confident, right, you've gathered enough feedback, or you've talked to certain people about this, or this only concerns like things that don't have a cascading effect on other teams like marketing or sales, etc., then I would say that, like, go ahead, right, and do some of the steps just to show basically that you're also here to improve, right, to make the processes, people, tools even around you function better. So it's this subtle balance.
Cool. Should we move on to 90 days?
I think so.
The finale.
Finale.
That's
Who wants to have a go on this one? Nikhil?
Oh, sure.
Bastian?
Yes. Yeah. So I think again, like the first 90 days, kind of similar to the 60 days, kind of transitioning into a deeper understanding of product, right? And I just put in there understanding product end to end, which means now at least I would want to be able to understand the product in the sense of my domain, right? If I'm actually leading a domain that involves certain teams, what part of the product that they touch should have an end-to-end understanding without being too deep, let's say, in the operations of within the team. I also put in able to contribute to product strategy, aka decisions and plannings. So this is basically revolving around Alexandra's point, right? So you can always audit the way that teams do discovery and propose changes. And it's very important to take the time. It's obviously not very it's not something that you should rush already to make some changes. And also be iterative with it, right? Experiment. There could be some frameworks and strategies that you deploy within the teams that might work, might not work. For example, like certain agile principles, or the way the teams are set up, domain structures, and you should be open to kind of iterate on it and change it when the change is needed, but obviously not rush towards it. I definitely agree with that. And again, iterating on the feedback that was already collected. If you're from a role like the companies that I've worked for in the past, like the KPIs are a big factor, right? That we have to always care about and own, right, for our areas. So may it be revenue, growth, acquisition, anything that drives the monetization of a business is something that the product leads in itself own, and they are expected to basically own anything to do with those KPIs, right? They go up, down, you're expected to answer why this behavior happened. So it's really important to understand your product, your users, what their behavior is like as well. I can give you an example, right? A product which is purely fintech might have a different kind of user, which is from someone in travel tech, right? Because seasonality is a thing. Many businesses have fiscal years that are different, and that might impact the amount of usage that you get out of a bank versus like a travel platform, which gets really busy during the holidays. Just kind of like a vague example. So really getting into those KPIs, and then again building onto those relationships that you might have been building already from the start, right? It's really important to get to know people. That's probably like the one diffusing factor between everything, because if you know the people and if you know how they work, if you understand their ways of working, if you make them that clear and transparent, then they're going to also support you in times when you need them. And then yes, with the teams, you always build trust with your team. PMs are going to be, if they're reporting to you, very important asset to you as a product team, right? To build products as well as their careers and their career growth also depend on you. So it's very important to get that trust feeling in and making sure that they're getting enabled to do their best rather than kind of getting top-down approaches and things like this. Yeah.
I love that you talk about trust, Nikhil, because this is also the one word I underlined here in my notes. And remember, you're not the PM anymore. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's really important. That means you will not be in the details of every project, and you have to put trust in your team. It doesn't work otherwise. The art of being a good team leader, product leader, half product is to identify those moments, those decisions where you might have to provide some guidance, or even might have to correct the way it's going. Yeah, like identifying those points by asking the right questions. You will not be on a day-to-day operations inside all the projects. Yeah? So you have to build up trust in your team. Yeah? And it starts with yourself, by the way, right? Really have this trust in you, and then show it also to others. And I think this is so important. So I really love this last point also from you, Nikhil.
Anything to add there, Alexandra?
Yes, I agree with trust. Definitely, right? This is the place where you already start like really contributing to this, but at the same time you start like closing the loop, right? And following through on your promises, especially to stakeholders. And this is a really hard time because it's around this time when you start really digging and working actually hands-on with the product strategy. And it's a difficult thing, but also with your team, right? Basically, this is one of the most important investments that you have to do at trust, yes, but also enabling them, right? What does it mean? Like, how do you need to understand, define basically the effectiveness of your PM team, right? And understand how to enable them. For example, like to build, let's say, a system of metrics, right? How do they work with it? Or feedback systems, as I said, or knowledge base, again, like super cool thing for also for onboarding. Maybe like build processes like continuous research or discovery, or how your PMs, for example, discover new opportunities and work with them further into the process. And another part is it's very much likely that somewhere around this time you'll also start hiring. And it takes a huge amount of time, right? So this is something that it's definitely like learnable, right? I'm just trying to say maybe that like it will take maybe a fourth to a third of your time, right? So thinking backwards, then I had this mistake in one of my jobs, previous one, and I said, okay, now I'm learning everything, it's a relaxed mode, and then boom, everything started to happen, like a strategy and this and hiring, etc., etc. And then like it was just an overkill, right? So just keep this in mind. It will be a very challenging time, so you'll have to manage your time as well. I think the time management is a very big problem for any leader, and I still think there is no recipe to it that is really working. So you have to be creative.
I think the main thing with the time management though is making sure you give yourself plenty of time not to do work as well. There's no point burning yourself out and not being there for your team, because I guess that's the obvious thing. Just work more, just throw more at it, and it'll get done. And sometimes there is a time and place to do that, but I think it's about finding that balance, because you're no good to anyone when you've run out of energy, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, just to add one more point here, which is probably not mentioned, but in lieu of like enabling the teams, right? There's one thing that you absolutely have to do is celebrate the achievements, right, and the wins. When we ship something out with different teams, it might be very different for a team that works on, let's say, purely technical part of things like API microservices versus a team that's always delivering a front end product, right? New features within the web app or the website. And when they, let's say, post it on Slack or show that, they release, they get a lot of handshakes and applause, and then a lot of technical teams don't get that. But I think it's very, very important to highlight that. And once you start celebrating achievements within your team, the morale of the PMs definitely go up. And I also encourage that to do within the teams as well, right? Whenever the PMs have engineers and we deliver some important things or even smaller wins, right, are worth celebrating for sure to build a culture.
That's great. End on a positive note. Well, not end, but ends that section on a positive note. I think, should we go through to the breakout rooms now, Mike?
Well, I was thinking about this, and we're actually a little bit lighter on attendees than we'd expected, and I think it's probably going to be a little bit counterproductive. So I think if we just open the floor up, and if people,
sure.
and there's enough people here that we can have a good discussion, but I think we just keep it as one conversation, keep this conversation going, I think.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If anyone has any questions, speak.
Can I go ahead? Because in 2 minutes I actually have an interview, so I have to leave. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's a good excuse. Go ahead.
Yeah,
This is all recorded as well, so we can post it afterwards as well.
Okay, great. I agree that it takes a lot of time to hire. No, I thanks for your insights. Very, very interesting. And I am actually, so I'm more a program manager for infrastructure, and I'm approaching now product development for the first time. So I find myself in a leadership position, but not having the experience as a product manager, but as an engineer and program manager. And I am in a context of early stage. So where I think a lot of your insights can definitely be transposed also to very early stage. And Alexandra also mentioned some of it. But I was wondering how do you approach this if there is no product strategy, or if there is or if you need to set it up and so you don't have this guidance from others, but you need to do it. And I was wondering if you have some insight or experience on that.
I think that I'm just naming product strategy, everything where that explicitly states we're here, we want to get here, right? Here's how we're doing this. It doesn't have to be like with all bangs and whistles. And I've also had quite enough experience with the pre-product market fit startups, right? And basically there are two main milestones where you want to get. One is you want to get to the problem solution fit, a validated one, right? The second, you want to kind of work on this, expand this, get this in front of the customers, and then eventually get to the product market fit. If you're lucky, you can like close the gap, let's say in 1.5 years, right? Or if you're doing everything right, it's just a ballpark estimation. So depending on where you are, right? I suggest to you, maybe not to think in terms of strategy. It can be intimidating, right? It looks like, oh, it's super formal, you know, I need to put the metrics in there, etc. But just work backwards, right? Like, what do you want to achieve? What is product market fit, right? This is when you have sort of a feeling, but also you have some sort of a metrics evidence for this, right? There is some organic growth, there is healthy usage and retention of the customers. Customers keep coming back for something, right? For the value, and they make some meaningful actions. And then your unit economic kind of works, right? Like, at least you understand, maybe you're not profitable, you maybe don't have revenue, but you can see that, like, it's okay for the starters, right? Without the growth. So really start working backwards from this, right? And like understand, what do I need to do to make my customers stay, right? Like, you can think about this as sort of a mind map, or like a tree, for example. What does retention mean to me, right? It means that every month a customer comes back to get this value, right? So month value. What is value, right? This is such and such action. What is like frequency, right? Is month enough? It's not enough. How do we increase this? Something like this, because at this stage, your main product focus is at generating value for customers, and so that they're able to consume it somehow, understand it, right? And use it. If you're even in a more like in an earlier stage, right, about product solution fit, I would recommend even to go with any like development and try to do your discovery validation. It's really where most of the discovery happens, right, with the new non-customers, where you are trying to get the first customers and understand that, okay, so I have something that really works for this specific very narrow audience, right? And solves their very specific problem, which is a big pain for them. That's the basic recipe. It's simple, but it's not easy. So instead of, you know, like taking some blueprints for strategy, just like sit down and write it out, right? This is the outcome that I want to achieve, right? What's the most like previous step to that? And then backwards, and then backwards, and this will be your strategy, but you can name it differently.
Thanks. So it's you mean it's a bit of both. So having this for more, let's say, not long but longer term view, but also doing prototyping fast.
Yeah.
And yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just outline your thoughts, right? How you're reaching there, and this will serve you already as some sort of a guideline.
Okay. Thanks. So I have to jump out. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Ricardo.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining.
There's a
Also, I
question
think
popped in.
Rodrigo has a question. Mike, if you want to read it.
Let me just open it up. I have a case here to share. I had just started a company as a lead product manager, and what I found in my early days was a clash, a culture clash, a departments clash, teams mates clash, quite a lot of clashes, and looks like they were waiting for my position to come in to throw out all this clash for me to deal with. How do you guys deal with situations like this? That's quite funny, because I speak to people quite a lot, and they seem to think product managers or product leaders, it's like the silver bullet for fixing everything that no one else wants to fix, like you're some sort of magicians or something.
Right. I think it's a very common problem, right? You get a lot of expectations as soon as you join a new role. And I feel for you, like in this position, because I've been there in the past. I think the most important thing in this situation is to set the expectations, right? What your role means, what you should touch and what you shouldn't. And you can only define that with I see like there's a culture clash. Obviously, the culture is not that great, but if you have a good relationship with your manager, who can support you enough to really outline the various aspects of your role, so you know what to touch and what not to, can really encourage your power to say no, right, in situations, because saying no is very important, especially when you're new, because you're always on track to try to prove everyone that I can deliver, and people are going to throw stuff at you. So saying no is extremely, extremely important.
And I mean, even though we are magicians, so Mike, we definitely
That
are.
is true. We
But
definitely
like,
are.
yes, this is a problem we cannot solve on our own. But if I read this problem, I would say this seems to be a priority A++ problem to solve, because it will block your progress on everything else we talked about if
Absolutely.
this is solved. But like Nikhil said, don't make it your problem. I think like what I read here between the lines, it's like something that's cross-departmental. It seems like a management level thing where probably like at first I would contact the head of people, culture, HR. I would go into discussion with the C-level to really see, look, this is something that requires more than a head of product can do on his own. But also make sure that there is something done with that, right? Because this problem, this might be a killer for you for any initiative you want to bring to life.
I would add even one more option here, and this option is run, right? Because sometimes this is not fixable. I just had my friend, basically, he was in absolutely the same situation, and he ran away after 3 months because he understood that these clashes are actually coming from the C-level, or at least they're not being solved, right? So I would say that use your judgment, but leave this as an option. It's not a bad option. It's actually will be better for you if you see that, okay, it's unsolvable. No one really wants to solve this, and this is possible. So try to, sit tight and assess for a couple of months. And if you see that there is no really intention to solve it, right? Maybe they're in a situation where they don't want to implement any changes because they're in a investment round, right? So they want everything to be very stable. And most like this tends to accumulate over time and get into a habit. So if you're, for example, in a situation like this, I would consider also like finding a place where, just simply better in a way, right? Because it's very draining, very, very emotionally taxing.
And that's always the risk, isn't it? When you join a new company, nobody tells you absolutely everything. You've got to join on trust, and as you say, if it's not what you think it is or was supposed to be, then absolutely there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying it's not the right place and finding something else. Have we got any other questions, or anyone else want to add anything?
I would have one question. First of all, thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge and giving all those advices. I just have started recently as a lead product owner, almost 90 days ago. So I feel a bit relieved after this meeting to be able to go and do some checks. Okay, I did it, I thought about it, because I had already that feeling, what am I doing here? So that was really helpful, thank you. If you are working with Agile Coach or Scrum Master, I know that the roles are differently perceived in the different companies, but I was thinking myself, what is there in addition that I could expect in the collaboration with me and my Agile Coach for my area, on top of what I was doing normally as a product manager? So being responsible for multiple product teams, having that one Agile Coach who is supporting those multiple product teams, do you see something in addition that the Agile Coach can support with, or something additional in the collaboration and different comparing to a product manager role?
Definitely. Go, Nikhil.
Yeah, go ahead, Alexandra. No worries.
Yeah. I have to say that I don't have a very big experience, right? But from my standpoint, I think that product managers, like every other role, but they're like, it's a senior role, it's a leadership role anyways. And with the time management issue, basically they should invest as much as possible into higher leverage activities, right? They should be able to define the areas of focus, the most prospective ones, and invest in them, their focus. And that doesn't leave too much time for operations, although it kind of is it comes with a package, right? So I think that maybe PMs, POs, and Agile coaches, Scrum Masters can really have the sort of alliance, right, where they support each other. But this needs to be talked through. They have to sit down and understand, like, this is where we overlap. This is where we hand off to each other, right? This is kind of your job. This is my job in the given condition, not by the book, by someone else's job description, but in the given conditions. What I can do from my job, what do I do best, right? So that I can make this team more effective or like focused, etc. And for example, from the PM's perspective, what do I do best? I'm a business owner, right? Like through the lens of a customer. I care about the customer, I care about the business. So maybe I should go invest most of my time there while you help me operationally. But again, like, I don't have too much of experience. That's just my 2 cents on this.
Magda, I can probably add like a small snippet here, right? We have ADLs, we have agile delivery leads, which essentially are, let's say, Scrum Masters. And I can say like they deliver incredible value to the product team or any product team, right? Because I think then one of the biggest tasks that these ADLs or Scrum Masters have is to make sure that we are following the processes that we or frameworks that we, let's say, document or are trying to implement, right? For example, even proper discovery. Sometimes there might be a process of 7 steps and a team might just not be documenting some things and skipping over steps or some things like this. And the agile leaders are really to enforce that process and make sure that we are doing from discovery to setting the OKRs correctly. And they often support product teams in setting the correct OKRs that correspond to like the company's vision and mission, right? Because those are the hard parts. And yeah, I mean, they definitely have a distinct role within a product team, more of a facilitator for the right ways of working.
Thank you.